Hello everyone, it's Miss LaChance back again with another read aloud video. Today we will be reading chapters 51 through 55 of our read aloud book for this summer, The Wild Robot Escapes by Peter Brown. Before we start off with this video, I would like to ask a couple of questions about the previous chapters or the previous 5 chapters that we have read together. You don't have to type out a response to this question in the comment section below, but you are absolutely welcome to if you are interested. But it's definitely something to think about. So before we get started with chapter 51 called The Airship, I want you to think about some of the ways that Roz has helped out some of the animals or the humans on Hilltop Farm. And then I want you to compare that to the ways that she has helped out some of the animals, her friends and family on the island where she first started off her journey. In the last video, we saw that Roz is finally beginning her escape from Hilltop Farm and back to her home on the island. And if you think about the way that books typically go, you're probably thinking that we haven't reached the climax yet, and that's something that we definitely want to be aware of. This is only the beginning of Roz's escape from the farm, and we are entering the part of the book where our robot friend will come across some conflict. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump right into chapter 51 called The Airship. And before we get started, here is a picture of the airship. The sun was up and our friends were on the move. They were traveling quickly and quietly along a narrow strip of forest that cut between vast crop fields. If not for that nagging fear of being spotted, it would have been a very pleasant hike. Wind whispered through the leaves, insects hummed and chirped, farm machines rumbled in the distance. And then there came a sound, a buzzing sound. Our friends hid in the underbrush as an airship rose up from the horizon ahead of them. It was a sleek white triangle flying low and fast. Roz adjusted her vision and saw familiar robots gazing out the front window. Give me a connection symbol if you think you know who these robots could be. Recco 1, Recco 2, and Recco 3 had been destroyed on the island. Perhaps these robots were Reccos 4, 5, and 6? They're flying toward Hilltop Farm, said Brightbill. We need to keep moving, said Roz. The airship disappeared to the south, and travelers continued north at a faster pace. They hurried through more strips of forest, passing squirrels and birds and groundhogs and other friendly creatures. But the robot and the goose had no time to chat. Later that day, the trees came to an abrupt end. Roz and Brightbill stood at the forest edge and faced an ocean of wheat. The wheat was still young and green. It gently waved in the wind and spread out as far as they could see. What should we do? Asked Brightbill. We need to keep moving, said Roz, staring across the plains. But I am not safe in the open. There must be more trees out there somewhere. I'll take a look, said Brightbill, and the goose launched himself skyward. Up, up, up he went high into the air until he finally stopped and floated, just a tiny winged shape against the blue, and then he dove back to his mother. There are trees in that direction, said Brightbill, pointing. It's far, about 30 minutes at top speed. Then we had better get started, said Roz. Our friends burst out from the underbrush, our robot sprinting through the field, the goose flying by her side. Roz had to concentrate to keep from slipping in the soft, muddy soil, but she stomped on, and far ahead, another line of trees slowly climbed into view. Brightbill suddenly swooped up and out of sight as his mother kept running. Then he lowered back down beside her and squawked, "The airship is returning!" Behind them, a tiny white triangle rose up from the horizon. It was growing larger and louder by the second. If Roz was seen, her newfound freedom and her life would be over. She couldn't take any chances. "Go on without me," hollered the robot, and she dropped to the ground. Brightbill hoped his mother knew what she was doing, and he flew on without her. Once he reached the trees, he perched himself on a branch and looked back. His mother had vanished. The airship, however, seemed to fill the sky. Its shadow flitted across the ground where Roz had just been. But the ship didn't see her, and it detected no electronic signal, so it kept going, racing above the trees and over the next field. So I guess it's a good idea that Roz took out her transmitter. Its engine noise gradually faded and it disappeared to the north. "You can come out, Ma," squawked Brightbill from his branch. A column of wheat stood up in the field. The robot had rushed her camouflage, and it crumbled off her body when she started to march. As she approached the trees, Roz looked at Brightbill in the branches and said, "We need to keep moving." Chapter 52 is called The Scout. Here is a picture of Brightbill, and it looks like he is flying in the sky and he's looking down. It looks like he is on the lookout for something, and that's probably why chapter 52 is called The Scout. It looks like he is looking down, scouting out for something. Let's go ahead and jump right in to chapter 52. Would the airship return? Were the Reccos hunting for Roz? Was it only a matter of time before she was caught? It was impossible to know. So our friends tried not to worry about those troubling questions, and they continued sneaking through farm country from one wooded area to the next. Roz wore a disguise of mud and weeds and bark. At the first hint of trouble, she would freeze and instantly became a rotten old tree trunk. Then she'd wait for Brightbill to tell her that it was safe to move on. If there were humans or robots nearby, she might have to wait for hours. Back on the island, Brightbill had practiced flying like hawks and owls and sparrows and vultures. He couldn't fly exactly like those other birds, of course, but he was an expert at diving and swooping and darting and soaring. Now he used those skills to secretly scout out the countryside for his mother. He'd fly up from her shoulder and return a short time later to share his findings. "We're coming to another farmhouse. Let's avoid it by cutting across the field. Beyond these trees is a highway. Stay here and I'll tell you when it's safe to cross. Straight ahead is a small town, but I can lead you around it." Brightbill's advice was always good, and Roz always followed it, and together the travelers safely made their way through farm country. And chapter 53 is called The Farm Country. During their travels, our friends passed every kind of farm imaginable. Some farms grew crops in vast fields and orchards. Others grew crops in great glimmering greenhouses. Some farms let their animals graze through open pastures. Others kept their animals confined to small enclosures. Some farms had old-fashioned barns and sheds. Others had modern laboratories that made meat, eggs, and milk without any animals at all. There seemed to be an infinite number of ways to produce food for humans. The farms were teeming with robot workers, and Roz couldn't resist spying on them as she carefully slunk past. The robots worked the fields and machines and livestock, their bodies shining in the sun, shimmering in the heat. This must have been how Roz looked back on Hilltop Farm. Were any of these robots like her? Were any of them quietly dreaming of escape? Or were they all just mindless machines, content with their place in this world? That's a great question that Roz is asking herself. Chapter 54 is called The Mountains. And here's a picture of the mountains. The flat plains of farm country gradually rolled into hills and valleys. There were fewer crop fields and more forests. The hills grew taller, the valleys sank deeper, the farms disappeared entirely. Our friends had reached the mountains. Brightbill floated on the wind as Roz climbed the slopes. They passed craggy rock formations and rushing waterfalls and meadows lush with flowers. The robot could have hiked on, never slowing or stopping, but the goose needed to rest. As the stars came out each evening, they found a safe location to settle down. Frost was common in the higher regions, and Roz took the lighter from her tool belt and built small campfires to keep her son warm. They sat around the crackling flames, reminiscing about life on the island until Brightbill drifted off to sleep. As the sun came up each morning, they'd clear away all traces of their campsite and set off again, deeper into the mountains. Eagles perched on jagged cliffs. Fish splashed through gurgling streams. Chipmunks bickered in the thick undergrowth. It felt good to be back in the wilderness, but this place wasn't home, so the travelers kept a brisk pace. What do you think that word brisk means? If Roz is feeling really eager to be home, what kind of pace do you think that she and Brightbill would be moving at? I wonder what that word brisk means. If you're interested in taking a guess, go ahead and comment in the comments section below. The robot adjusted her camouflage to match her surroundings. In the forest, she wore leaves and tree bark. In the meadows, she wore grass and wildflowers. In the rocky terrain, she wore dirt and weeds. Even way out there in the wilderness, she wanted to go unseen. What Roz didn't realize was that she was already being watched. And with that, we are going to start chapter 55. This is the last chapter that we're going to read today, and it is called The Attack. Wide mountain meadows made the robot nervous. While hiking through them, she felt exposed and easy to spot. Camouflage helped, but it was hard not to notice a walking clump of wildflowers, especially one accompanied by a goose. And it was in one of those wide meadows that trouble caught up with our friends. From the corner of her eye, Roz sensed movement. She turned, but saw only tall grass blowing in the breeze. Then a twig snapped, but the sound was swallowed by a distant roll of thunder. It wasn't until the wind changed and a musky scent wafted by that the robot understood the danger. "I smell wolves," whispered Roz. Brightbill's eyes grew big and round, and he whispered back, "What should we do?" Before Roz could reply, two wolves leaped out from the brush. They charged towards the robot, snarling and snapping their jaws. Roz heaved her son toward the sky so that he could fly to safety, and then she burst into a sprint. The robot zigged and zagged across the meadow, trying to shake off the wolves, but when she dashed through a patch of soft ground, she slipped and toppled into the grass. The wolves quickly surrounded their prey, heads low, ears drawn back, deep growls rumbling through their teeth. "Remember us, Roz?" said the huge male with the scar. "Hello again, Shadow," said the robot, slowly getting to her feet. "And I believe your name is Barb." "You have a good memory," said the female wolf. "Actually, I have a perfect memory," said the robot. "And yet you've forgotten your rifle." A toothy smile appeared on Shadow's face. "You aren't so tough without your rifle, are you?" Barb sniffed the breeze. "Where's your pet goose?" And then she saw Brightbill perched in a lone tree in the middle of the meadow. "He is not my pet," said Roz. "He is my son." Shadow chuckled. "We've heard the stories about the robot mother and her son, the goose. They're very touching." She turned and barked, "Join us, Brightbill. We'd love to meet you up close." "Stay where you are, son," hollered Roz. "I will take care of them." "You'll take care of us?" growled Shadow. "No, Barb and I will take care of you." The robot's computer brain hummed as it tried to make a plan. The wolves were stalking toward her. Any second now, they would attack. Roz had to do something, anything, so she stalled. Shadow, Barb, is it just the two of you? Roz scanned the meadow and saw no other wolves. Where's the rest of your pack? Well, that was the wrong question to ask, because the fur on Shadow's back stood up and he snarled, "This is my pack now." Then the wolves pounced, but Roz wasn't there. With all the strength in her legs, the robot launched herself up and away, and now she was soaring through the air in a long, graceful arc. Once her feet stomped back to the ground, she launched herself up and away again. With giant arching strides, the robot bounded across the meadow in the direction of her son. At first, the wolves were baffled by the robot's strange escape, but they were expert hunters. They raced after her, studying her closely, watching where she landed. And when Roz made her final leap toward Brightbill's tree, a heavy paw knocked her off balance. She tumbled through the air and slammed against the trunk. Leaves shook loose, dead branches crashed down, but the robot held tight to the tree. "Are you okay, Ma?" said the goose as he fluttered to his mother's side. "Just some light scrapes," said the robot, and she pulled herself onto a sturdy branch. On the edges of our page layout here, we have the wolves and we have Roz leaping into the air. Below the tree, the wolves were howling with laughter. "Nice try, Roz," said Shadow, "but you can't outrun us. Wolves are built for chasing." "You are wasting your time," said the robot. "You cannot eat me, and you will never catch my son." "You still don't get it, Roz," growled the wolf. "I'm not hunting you for food. I'm hunting you for revenge." And that is the end of chapter 55. In the next read aloud video, we will be reading chapters 56 through 60. And chapter 56 is called The Torch. As always, if you're interested in interacting with the text, please feel free to comment about the book in the comment section below. I would be super curious to hear what you think about the book so far. Thank you so much for watching this video. I have missed you guys so much this summer, and making these read aloud videos has really given me the chance to connect with you guys again, even if it's not in our classroom. I'm glad that you guys are clicking onto these videos, and I hope you're enjoying the read alouds. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, friends!